What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb and we are back with more Aetherdrift spoilers and Aetherdrift first thoughts. Before we get into it, if you guys want a free $15, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You guys get some free money and it helps out the channel. Additionally, if you guys are enjoying the content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. Now, let's get into today's commander with ketramose. This is a 3 CMC Orzhov commander that I think is going to be very popular, and there's probably going to be two different builds. There's probably going to be a really salty build and a very interesting build, and we're going to talk about both of those today. But first, let's talk about what the commander does. This guy has Menace, Lifelink, and Indestructible. He can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile, and then additionally, whenever a creature or anything is exiled from a graveyard or the battlefield, we're going to get to draw a card and then lose a life. Now this is going to be very useful because there's a lot of ways to exile a ton of stuff in Orzhov colors. Now, what I think the salty version is going to be, and the version that I think you're probably going to want to stay away from if you enjoy playing in your playgroup, is just mass destruction. This guy needs creatures in the graveyard to exile to get value, right? And it is a 1 or more clause, so you're only going to get 1 trigger off of exiling an entire person's graveyard, so you really want to exile one thing at a time. But in order to do that, we need to fill the graveyard up. An easy way to do that is to just destroy everyone's creatures, and then again, our commander is indestructible, so we don't care if we're just mass board wiping over and over again, making sure our opponents never have anything and we have everything. Another thing that this build is going to include is a lot of single target exile effects. White and black have a ton of single target exile effects, so you can kind of make it to where your opponent just doesn't play the game and never gets to resolve any of their creatures. Pretty salty. People are not going to want to play against that version of the deck. What I think is going to be really fun is a blink strategy. You're still going to include some of the salty stuff that is really efficient with this commander, but what I kind of like is using stuff like Aerial Extortionist and then a Fellas Dar Guardian, and then you just blink your creatures over and over again for a ton of value. This does trigger whenever anything goes into exile, including our creatures, or any creature goes into exile, including our creatures. So if we're blinking our creatures for insane value, we're going to get to draw cards while we're doing that, and that's just going to make a super fun and unique blink strategy in Orzhov colors. So if that sounds like something you guys would be interested in, let's get into these card suggestions. But before we do that, I did want to say one thing. With these first look videos, I'm kind of gauging the popularity of the commander and if the community wants a deck tech. So even if you don't look at the suggestions, if you want a deck tech of this guy, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section down below and like the video. I've already done Loot and then Hashiton, and Hashiton, very popular. I'm probably going to build a CEDH version and casual version. Loot, not very popular. I'm probably not going to build that deck. So just so you know what these videos are meant for, not only am I giving you suggestions on how I would build this commander, additionally, I'm probably not going to actually build the commander unless I see a lot of demand for it in the comment section down below. Now let's get into those card suggestions. The first thing I want to touch on are some salty cards that synergize with the commander, but you want to be wary of. Rest in Peace and Dauthi Voidwalker effects. Now, these do make it to where whenever you destroy a creature on the battlefield, it goes to exile instead, and that is going to trigger our commander. The thing is, we are going to lose access to the graveyard now. Now, none of their cards are going to enter the graveyard ever, so using single target exile 1 card from a graveyard effects are kind of not going to synergize with this type of strategy. I like Dauthi here because Dauthi you can get rid of at any time, but Rest in Peace might be kind of a borderline non-bow, right? Because if we're not able to put cards in their graveyard, we're not able to use single target exile effects to exile cards from the graveyard because their graveyard's empty. So it's just something to think about. And we honestly have a lot of cracked cards that exile 1 card at a time from opponents' graveyards, like Emperor of Bones. This guy is really cool because at the beginning of each combat step, we get to exile up to 1 card from a graveyard. And then he has an adaptability. So whenever we put a 1/1 counter on this guy, we get to put a creature exiled with Emperor of Bones onto the battlefield under our control with a finality counter on it. It has haste, and then we sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Notably, a finality counter makes it to where you have to exile the creature instead of it just dying. So this is actually going to give us a trigger of our commander, and it's going to give us another trigger of our commander, because at the beginning of combat, we get to exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard every single turn. So this guy's basically 2 triggers per turn if you have a reliable way to put 1/1 counters on him. You can also just kind of pair this with the blink strategy to blink Emperor of Bones, and then he comes in without a 1/1 counter, so there's access to get multiple triggers of this guy with the blink strategy and this deck. Aerial Extortionist, Aurelia's Vindicator, and Duplicant are all cards that exile a creature on ETB. Hell, Aerial Extortionist even does it on attack. So now we're able to exile our opponent's stuff, and then we're just going to get advantages off of that. You can kind of see where this deck can become salty depending on how you build it, but honestly, these are just solid removal pieces that have a ton of synergy with our commander. Felidar Guardian, Flicker Wisp, and Eldrazi Displacer are all amazing cards that can flicker our creatures and permanents. That way, whenever we're exiling them, we're getting advantages, and then judging on what we're blinking, we're also getting more advantage whenever they enter the battlefield. So you can kind of see where the blink strategy comes into play, and it's seeming like one of the more powerful options and routes to take with this commander. There's also a lot of ways we can exile our opponent's creatures and steal them at the same time to trigger our commander and steal our opponent's creatures, like Dino DNA and Ghost Vacuum. Very impactful cards. They are kind of expensive, but you kind of get the worth by spending that mana. Not to mention, I know Orzhov is black and white, but there's a plethora of ways to make a ton of mana in black, so do not get scared off by the high CMC of these cards whenever we're talking about the reanimation ability. I mean, they're both 6 mana, but what I want you to notice is the ability that exiles the creature is very cheap and reusable. So this is a very solid way to just tap these artifacts and trigger a commander to draw a card. There's even Dollhouse of Horrors. It's a little bit different. It exiles our creatures, but exiling our creatures still triggers our commander, and we still get access to the creatures in our graveyard. That is another route you can take this commander. I don't think it's going to be as powerful, but you could take a route where you just try to fill your graveyard as fast as possible and then use reanimation effects that exile the creature card from the graveyard, like Abyssal Harvester. Now you're getting access to these creatures and triggering your commander at the same time, getting more card advantage, and you're probably cheating something broken into play. I think this deck kind of turns into you cheating broken stuff into play and it not really being that commander focused. It's just an Orzhov Reanimator deck that gets some card advantage off of reanimating stuff, but I think it is still a route you could take with this commander. I just don't think it's going to be as popular as the other two: Salt Inducing, Board Wipe, Remove Everything, or Blink Everything, get insane value. That's going to do it for my ideas for Ketramose. If you guys have any ideas or you think I missed a strategy that can be utilized with this commander, let me know in the comments section down below, and let me know in the comments section down below if you want me to flesh out this commander, because I think this guy's going to be a very cool and unique build around. Also, Preston, didn't mention that guy, but Preston's going to be insane in this deck as well, especially if you go for the blink strategy. With that being said, guys, let's shout out our patrons: Praetor, Excessum, The Professional Heal, and Irrelevant. You guys are amazing. I hope this helped you guys in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you guys in the next one.